When it comes to naval warfare, aviation has dominated the discussion ever since the end of the Second World War, and as the technology has evolved, helicopters have come to be the most important and underrepresented aspects. They are carried on almost every single vessel for both direct combat and as a reconnaissance asset, and it's the first of the two that we'll be looking at today. So how does the Royal Navy arm its lynxes to take on threats? Well, that would be the Martlet missile. The history of the missile is one that I've strangely covered before, as the Martlet missile has a strange link to another one of the UK's missile systems, Starstreak. The two came from the same common ancestor in the Starburst missile. To give you a quick refresher, the UK started with a missile called Blowpipe, which was the UK's first man-pads, and it was, frankly, awful to use. Then came the Javelin missile, which was a massive improvement, and in the 80s and early 90s they would move on to Starburst. So, now that we're all caught up, we can get on to Martlet. The Royal Navy would start looking for both a light and a heavy missile for naval use, across a number of both defensive and aggressive roles. The programme was first announced in 2014 with an expected delivery date in 2020. There was no procurement trial for the missiles on the light weapons side. It would have appeared to have been a sole manufacturer bid, with Thales taking on the contract. Thales would use lessons it learnt with the Starstreak programme that they were still in the middle of and start applying it to the Navy's needs. Unlike Starstreak that needed to travel at Mach 3, Martlet could be a lot slower, but it did need an actual warhead that was filled with explosives, so they couldn't just take one missile and switch it with the other. There is some level of crossover, but I do need to stress that the parts are not interchangeable, but they were designed by the same engineers in the same company, so there are echoes of the technology across both systems. The experience seemed to speed up development, but as with all programs it wasn't without fault. A series of scheduling days pushed back adoption of the system by about a year. There were problems with mounting the missile onto the stub wings of the Lynx Wildcat, and of course COVID. But the biggest problem with the Martlet missile was something called mission creep. When the program was first envisioned under the Future Air-to-Surface Guided Weapons program, the brief was simple. They needed a missile that could be fired from helicopters in an anti-air role, and this was easy enough. But over the 5 years of development, politicians and military leaders alike started to expand the brief. This started when they asked the designers to launch the missile from small drones. Fair enough, they look a little bit like a helicopter. But then it came to land-based launchers and ship-based launchers. Could it now hit shore targets as well as naval ones? The number of roles Martlet would have to fill would slowly increase. All of it was possible, hence why there were images of Ukrainians with ground-launched Martlets, but none of it was ideal, especially when the Ministry of Defence had spent so much time complaining about the cost of the development. But all of this work would finally see Martlet enter service in 2021 with full adoption by 2025. It is a program that has seen limited adoption by other countries, most notably Saudi Arabia and Indonesia, who have purchased the system and are currently using them as part of an integrated air defence system. There are also the previously mentioned Ukrainians, who received Martlet as part of an aid package. I will add here that despite your opinion on the war and aiding Ukraine, this would have still been a good idea. Thales and the UK government now have live fire testing data on how the missile, and they can make improvements on it, so it's normally worth the limited cost. As for countries that are looking to procure Martlet, the Indians are the furthest along, with a confirmed purchase valued at just under $500 million. Then there's Portugal, Britain's oldest ally, who's purchased the Martlet for use by light ground vehicles alongside purchasing Starstreak missiles. The last and most curious case is Taiwan. They have not procured the Martlet missiles per se, but they did purchase a number of Jackal drones, which can fire Martlet missiles, so there's still a possibility they're procuring the missiles at some point in the future. The mass of the missile comes in at 13 kilos or 29 pounds, a length of 1.3 metres and a diameter of 76 millimetres, increasing to 260 for the wings. So it's just a little bit smaller than its cousin in Starstreak. The HE blast fragmentation warhead weighs in at roughly 3 kilos or a quarter of the missile's total weight. This was not unusual for missiles unless they're attempting to maximise range, which in this case they were not. It operates a proximity fuse, which makes a lot of sense in its primary role as an anti-air missile, but it is quite a small warhead in comparison to missiles used by other fixed-wing aircraft. Its range comes in at 8 kilometers, making it a good short-range missile for targets within visual range, doing the job it was designed for. Its speed comes in at a little over Mach 1.5, which is slow in comparison to Starstreak, but falls closer in line with other missiles of its type. But to the question all of you have actually been wondering, how much does all of this cost? Well, I have no idea. The best guess is around £250,000. This number is coming from 2024, as the UK pledged 650 missiles at a cost of £160 billion. But it is just an estimate, so take it with a pinch of salt. But all of this would be worthless if the missile didn't perform, so how effective are they in reality? In the testing done by the Royal Navy, they appeared to be very accurate. This accuracy was repeated from both helo-launched and ship-launched missiles against test drones and small unmanned boats. But you don't really care about testing, you care about real life, so how's it fared there? Well, it would first see use during the Houthis' attempt to blockade the Red Sea, as both helicopter-launched and ship-launched missiles would successfully intercept drones, proving that all of that testing hadn't gone to waste. They proved to be more cost-effective than the alternative Sea Scepter and Aster missiles used by the Royal Navy for air defence. That's as cost-effective as intercepting a $10,000 drone with a $250,000 missile can be. Then they would see use in Ukraine. This was almost exclusively the ground launch role, as both man-pads and vehicle launch missiles were sent to that country where it too proved effective. Martlet fills a strange gap, however. If we look at it objectively in the counter-drone warfare aspect, it's looking to get filled by laser-based systems in the future. And the drones it was designed to counter are now filling the role in the anti-ship category. Alongside this, Brimstone has undergone testing for naval use, and Brimstone missiles are cheaper, have a longer range, and have a better guidance system. Martlets are slowly getting edged out by other systems, so that there is a chance it may be the last of its kind, especially as the Ministry of Defence moves towards consolidating programs and missile systems.